The machines in Section D make a different sound after midnight. I noticed it my first week at Hartman Industrial Manufacturing, this change in the rhythm. During the day, the presses and stampers hum with this steady industrial pulse, almost musical if you're tired enough. But once that clock hits 12 and the building shifts into what we call night mode, everything sounds hollow, like the machinery's echoing through spaces that shouldn't exist. My name's Marcus Webb, 24 years old, been working the overnight shift here for the past 18 months, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. 5 nights a week, operating a hydraulic press in Section D. The pay's good, better than anything else I qualified for with just a high school diploma and 2 years of community college. Night shift differential adds almost $3 an hour. That's the kind of money that lets you stop choosing between car payments and groceries. But there's a reason the pay's so good. There's a reason most people don't last more than a few months on nights. And there's a reason we have rules the day shift has never heard of. I'm writing this down because I need someone else to know. Need there to be a record somewhere outside these walls. Because if something happens to me, if I end up like Brandon or Miguel or the 17 others who vanished from this building over the past 70 years, at least someone will understand why. Let me tell you how this started. Last April, I was working retail at a sporting goods store in Fort Wayne, making $9.50 an hour, getting maybe 30 hours a week if I was lucky, living in a studio apartment that cost more than I could afford, eating ramen 3 meals a day, watching my checking account hover around $40 while my student loan payments piled up. I saw the Hartman Industrial posting on Indeed around 2 a.m. one night. Couldn't sleep because my upstairs neighbor was having another screaming match with his girlfriend. I was scrolling through job listings on my phone, desperate for anything that paid better than retail. The position was simple. Machine operator, night shift, full benefits, starting at $16 an hour plus shift differential. I applied right there from my bed. Got a call back the next day. Woman named Sandra from HR, sounding exhausted, asking if I could come in for an interview that afternoon. The whole thing felt rushed, like they needed someone immediately. Should have been my first warning sign. The factory is about 40 miles outside Indianapolis, right off State Road 37. Middle of nowhere, really, surrounded by cornfields and not much else. I drove out there on a Thursday afternoon, the spring sun making everything look normal and safe. Just another industrial building with a parking lot and a chain-link fence. Red brick, small windows, loading docks in the back, nothing remarkable. Sandra met me in the front office, mid-50s, gray roots showing through brown dye, coffee stains on her blouse. She had me fill out paperwork while she checked her phone, barely asking any real interview questions. You worked with machinery before? Some. Operated a forklift at a warehouse job 2 years ago. Good enough. You okay working overnight? Yeah, I need the hours. She nodded, still looking at her phone. Shift is 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. You'll be in Section D, operating hydraulic presses. Ray Kowalski's the team lead. He'll train you. Start Monday? That was it. No skills test, no background check that I knew of, no second interview. Just sign here, here, and here, and welcome to Hartman Industrial. Drove home with a strange feeling in my chest. Not quite excitement, not quite dread. Something in between. My first night, I showed up early. Always do that at a new job, trying to make a good impression. The parking lot was mostly empty when I pulled in around 9:30, just 4 cars scattered near the employee entrance. The sun had set maybe an hour earlier, and those sodium lights were already on, casting everything in that sickly yellow glow that makes your skin look jaundiced. I grabbed my lunch bag, turkey sandwich I'd made that afternoon, an apple and a bag of chips, locked my car and walked toward the entrance. The employee door led straight into a break room, smelled like burnt coffee and old microwave popcorn. Few workers scattered around, nobody talking, just sitting there with their phones or staring into space. The kind of tired that goes deeper than one bad night's sleep. Found the time clock near the back hallway, punched in my employee number. 10 p.m. exactly. You the new guy? Turned to find a short man, maybe 60 years old, standing behind me. Thinning gray hair, weathered face with deep lines around his eyes. Name tag said Ray Kowalski, team lead. Marcus Webb, first night. Ray looked me over for a long moment, really studying me like he was trying to figure out if I'd make it. Sandra assigned you to Section D? She said machine operator, night shifts, didn't mention a specific section. Something crossed his face, quick, gone before I could read it. Right. Come on, I'll show you around before the shift starts. He pushed through a set of double doors, and I followed him onto the factory floor. The space was massive, had to be 2 football fields long, filled with industrial equipment arranged in rows. Assembly lines, stamping presses, quality control stations. The ceiling was maybe 30 feet up, crisscrossed with ductwork and light fixtures. Most of the lights were off, leaving these deep pockets of shadow between the machines. Our footsteps echoed on the concrete, only sound in the whole place. "Day shift cleared out about 20 minutes ago," Ray said. "We run a skeleton crew on nights. 10 guys spread across the whole facility, just enough to keep essential lines running, handle any urgent orders." We passed rows of silent machinery. That's when I noticed something strange. Every piece of equipment had a small strip of red tape on it. Some strips were faded and peeling, others looked fresh, all positioned at eye level. "What's with the tape?" Ray stopped walking, stood there for a second, not looking at me. "Safety markers. Helps you see the equipment better in low light." He started walking again, faster now. Section D was in the back of the building, partially walled off from the main floor. The equipment looked older here, heavy steel, hydraulic systems that probably dated back to the 70s. Ray showed me my station, a large stamping press with a control panel covered with buttons and dials. He walked me through the basics. Feed sheet metal here, press this pedal, machine stamps the part, remove it from the die, inspect for quality, stack it on the pallet. Check measurements every hour, log production numbers, watch for any malfunction warnings. Standard stuff, nothing I couldn't handle. "Production schedule's on that clipboard," Ray said, pointing to a workbench nearby. "Follow the list, check your measurements, you'll be fine." He paused. His hand rested on the machine's control panel. "There's also something else you need to know." Reached into his shirt pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper, worn soft from being handled repeatedly. "I'm going to give you this. You're going to read it, and you're not going to ask me any questions about it tonight, understand?" The serious tone in his voice made my skin prickle. "Okay." "I mean it, Marcus. No questions tonight. Do your work, follow what's written on this paper, and we'll talk tomorrow. But you need to read this before the shift officially starts, before the lights go down." "The lights go down?" Ray pressed the paper into my hand. His palm was rough, calloused from decades of factory work. "Read it. I need to check on the others before we start." He walked away before I could respond, disappeared around a corner of machinery, leaving me alone in Section D with a piece of paper that suddenly felt heavy in my hand. I unfolded it. Notebook paper, 3 holes punched on the side. The handwriting was cramped, urgent, written in blue ink that had faded in places. Someone had written "Night Shift Protocols, Section D" across the top in capital letters. Below that, a numbered list. Never enter Section D before the overhead lights switch to night mode. Wait in the break room until you hear the tone. Do not acknowledge or respond to anyone calling your name if you cannot see who is speaking. If you hear the press machines running on their own, leave Section D immediately. Return only after the sound stops. Stay away from the basement access door at the far end of the section. It should be locked. If you find it open, do not investigate. Report it to Ray immediately. Between 2 a.m. and 3 a.m., the temperature in Section D will drop significantly. This is normal. Put on your jacket and continue working. If the overhead lights flicker 3 times in rapid succession, stop working and face away from your machine until it stops. Do not work alone in Section D after 4 a.m. If you find yourself alone, clock out and wait in the break room. At exactly 5:30 a.m., go to the break room regardless of where you are in production. Do not stay in Section D past this time. If you see someone in Section D who is not on the night shift roster, do not approach them. Leave the section immediately. Trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. I read through it 3 times. Each pass made my stomach tighten. This had to be hazy, right? Scare the new guy with mysterious rules and ominous warnings. But Ray's face had been completely serious, almost grave. The overhead lights suddenly changed, went from bright white fluorescence to this softer, yellower tone. At the same time, a low electronic tone echoed through the factory, lasted maybe 3 seconds, like a warning signal. Night mode. Rule 1. I looked down at the paper in my hands, then back at the empty section around me. The shadows seemed deeper now, spaces between machines darker. Somewhere in the building I could hear other workers moving around, distant clang of metal on metal, pneumatic hiss of air tools. Normal factory sounds, nothing to worry about. I folded the paper and put it in my pocket. Checked the production schedule, had a list of parts to stamp, measurements to verify, quality checks to complete. Standard work. I'd been operating machinery since I was 18. This was just another job, just another shift. But as I positioned the first sheet of metal and activated the press, I couldn't shake the feeling that the building was watching me, waiting to see if I'd follow the rules. The first few hours passed okay. I fell into the rhythm of the work. Feed the metal, press the pedal, wait for the hydraulic hiss, remove the finished part, inspect it, set it aside, repeat. The noise was substantial even through my ear protection, dull roar of machinery. But it was steady, predictable. I'd glance at the clock every so often, 10:30, 11, 11:45. Around midnight, I took my first break. The break room was more populated now, maybe 6 workers scattered around tables. Ray was there, eating a sandwich, reading something on his phone. He looked up when I walked in, but didn't say anything. I grabbed my lunch from the fridge, sat at an empty table, unwrapped my sandwich. The coffee from the pot near the sink was thick and bitter, but it was hot. Nobody was talking. That struck me as strange. Every job I'd ever had, break rooms were loud. People complaining about bosses, discussing weekend plans, general noise of people killing time. But here, everyone ate in silence, lost in their own thoughts. One guy, maybe 40 with a gray beard, kept glancing at the wall clock. Another worker, younger, around my age, was methodically tearing a napkin into smaller and smaller pieces. Not eating anything, just tearing. I wanted to ask about the rules, but Ray's warning echoed in my head. No questions tonight, just follow the paper. So I ate my sandwich in silence and tried not to think about rule number 2. Do not acknowledge or respond to anyone calling your name if you cannot see who is speaking. 20 minutes later, I was back in Section D. Temperature was comfortable. Maybe a little cool, but nothing unusual. I checked my measurements, verified my count, continued stamping parts. 1:15, 1:30, 1:45. At 2 a.m. exactly, the temperature dropped. It wasn't gradual. One moment I was comfortable, next moment I could see my breath fogging in the air. The change was so sudden I actually stepped back from my machine, looking around for the source. No windows open, no doors to the outside, just the same enclosed section, now rapidly growing colder. Rule 5. Between 2 a.m. and 3 a.m., the temperature in Section D will drop significantly. This is normal. My arms broke out in goosebumps. I grabbed my jacket from where I'd hung it on a nearby hook, zipped it up. The cold was intense now, like standing in a walk-in freezer. How was this normal? But I thought about Ray's instructions. Follow the rules, don't ask questions. So I pulled my hood up, shoved my hands in my pockets between pressing operations, and kept working. The cold made everything harder. Fingers were stiff, movements slower. The metal I was feeding into the press was ice cold to touch, even through my gloves. I could hear my teeth chattering. But I kept going. 2:15, 2:30, 2:45. At 3 a.m., the temperature returned to normal. Again, the change was instant, like flipping a switch. One moment I was freezing, next moment the air was comfortable again. I unzipped my jacket, body still shivering from the after effects. What kind of ventilation system could do that? What possible explanation for a temperature drop that precise? If you were listening right now, help me prove something wrong. My mother said I wouldn't reach 1,000 subscribers, but I believe stories like this deserves to be heard. Help me show her that these tales matter. Then I kept working. Had parts to stamp, quota to meet, rent to pay. Whatever weird stuff was happening in this factory, it was just weird stuff. Nothing actually dangerous had happened. Just some cold air and a list of strange rules. At 3:30, I heard my name. Marcus! Came from behind me, somewhere near the back of Section D. A man's voice, unfamiliar, speaking just above a whisper. I turned around, hand frozen on the press controls. Nobody was there, just empty space. Shadows, silent machinery. "Marcus, over here!" The voice was coming from the direction of the basement access door, the one I was specifically told to stay away from. Rule 4. I turned back to my work, heart hammering in my chest. Rule 2. Do not acknowledge or respond to anyone calling your name if you cannot see who is speaking. "Marcus, I need your help. Something's wrong with the hydraulics." The voice was closer now, sounded so reasonable, so normal, like a coworker who genuinely needed assistance. Every instinct in me wanted to turn around, to help, to be the reliable new employee. I kept my eyes on my machine, started the next pressing cycle, gripped the edge of the machine so hard my knuckles went white. Don't turn around, don't acknowledge it. The voice called my name twice more, each time sounding more urgent, more distressed. I didn't turn around. After what felt like forever, but was probably only a few minutes, the voice stopped. The silence that followed was somehow worse. I could feel something watching me, could sense a presence in the empty space behind me. But I didn't turn around. Just kept feeding metal into the press, kept checking measurements, kept following the production schedule like it was the only thing anchoring me to reality. 4 a.m. came and went. At 5:30, I practically ran to the break room, didn't care if it made me look weak or scared. Ray was already sitting at a table, fresh cup of coffee steaming in front of him. He looked at me and nodded once, a gesture that somehow communicated understanding. The rest of the night shift guys filtered in over the next few minutes. Nobody talked about their work, about any problems they'd encountered. We all just sat there, drinking bad coffee, watching the clock count down to 6 a.m. When the tone finally sounded, signaling the end of night mode, there was this collective exhale, like we'd all been holding our breath. I clocked out and walked to my car on shaking legs. The sun was just starting to rise, painting the parking lot in shades of orange and pink. Everything looked normal in the daylight, just another factory, just another shift. But I knew something had happened in there, something that couldn't be explained by ventilation systems or acoustics or hazing rituals. I sat in my car for a long time before starting the engine, staring at the factory building. All those windows dark now, empty. Somewhere inside, the day shift was clocking in, getting ready to start their work. They'd walk past my station in Section B, use the same machines, breathe the same air. And they'd never know about the rules. They'd never hear the voices, never feel the impossible cold, because whatever was in that factory only came out at night. I pulled out my phone, opened my banking app. The night shift differential was already posted, an extra $2.75 an hour. I did the math quickly. That was an additional $440 a month, almost $6,000 a year. Was it worth it? I looked back at the factory, at the loading docks where day shift workers were already moving around, like nothing was wrong, like this was just a normal workplace where normal things happened. I started my car and drove home, the list of rules folded in my pocket. I had 8 hours to sleep, to pretend I had a normal job, before I had to come back and do it all over again. Because the truth was simple. I needed this job, and whatever was waiting for me in Section D every night, I was going to have to learn to live with it. I didn't sleep well that first day. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard that voice calling my name. Patient, persistent. I kept replaying those moments in my head, trying to find a rational explanation. Maybe it had been another worker, someone playing a prank. Maybe the acoustics in the factory were weird, making sounds carry from other sections. Maybe I'd been tired and disoriented. But I knew that wasn't true. I'd heard what I'd heard, felt what I'd felt. And Ray's face when he'd given me those rules, that deadly serious expression, told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't a joke. This was survival information. When I showed up for my second shift, I found Ray in the break room before the lights went down. He was sitting alone, eating an apple, gestured for me to sit across from him. The other night shift workers gave us a wide berth, gathering at the far end of the room. "So," Ray said quietly, not looking at me, "you came back. I need the job." He nodded, like this was an answer he'd heard before. "You followed the rules last night?" "Yeah, heard my name called. didn't respond. Ray finally looked up at me. His eyes were tired, the kind of weariness that comes from carrying heavy knowledge for too long. Good. That's good, Marcus. A lot of new guys don't take the rules seriously at first. Think it's hazing or we're messing with them.
He took another bite of his apple. Those guys don't usually last. What happens to them? Different things. Some quit after the first night, too scared to come back. Can't blame them for that. Some try to tough it out, ignore the rules because they think they're smarter than us old-timers. He paused. Those are the ones that worry me. Why? Ray glanced around the break room, making sure no one was listening. 3 years ago, we had a guy named Derek Collins. Young guy, about your age, cocky. Lasted 2 weeks before he decided the rules were bull. Started testing them, staying in Section D past 5:30, going near the basement door. Thought he was proving something. Ray's voice dropped even lower. One night, he didn't clock out at 6 a.m. We found his time card on the ground outside Section D. Never found Derek. My stomach went cold. What do you mean you never found him? I mean, he vanished. Company did an investigation, called it a walk-off, said he probably just got fed up and left during his shift. But Derek's car was still in the parking lot. His wallet and phone were in his locker. He didn't walk off anywhere. Ray finished his apple, tossed the core in a nearby trash can. Company brought in extra security for a few weeks after that, cameras in every section. You know what they found? I shook my head. Nothing. No sign of Derek anywhere on the footage. It was like he just stepped out of reality. Ray stood up. Look, I'm not trying to scare you off. You seem like a smart guy. We need good workers on nights. Just take the rules seriously, okay? They're there for a reason. What reason? What is this place, Ray? He was quiet for a long moment, staring at the clock on the wall. The tone would sound soon, switching the factory to night mode. This factory's been here since 1952. Built on land that was farmland before that. Before that, something else. Some places, they got history, and some history doesn't stay buried. He met my eyes. You ask anyone on the day shift about weird stuff, they'll look at you like you're crazy, because nothing happens during the day. Whatever's in this building, it only wakes up at night. The tone sounded, echoing through the break room. Ray walked toward the factory floor, paused at the door. One more thing, Marcus. The rules you got, those are just for Section D. Every section's got their own set. Assembly, quality control, maintenance. We all follow different rules because we're all dealing with different things. Different things? But Ray was already gone, disappearing into the factory as the lights shifted to their yellow night mode. I sat there for another minute, processing what he had said. Different sections had different rules. That meant whatever was happening here wasn't localized to one area. He was throughout the entire building. I thought about quitting right then, walking out the door, getting in my car, never coming back. I could find another retail job, something with regular hours and normal problems. But then I thought about my apartment rent, my car payment, my student loans, the night shift differential, what it meant for my finances. And I thought about Ray's words. You seem like a smart guy. I could do this. Just had to follow the rules. Don't overthink it. Don't test the boundaries. Do the work and go home. How hard could that be? I spent the next 2 weeks learning exactly how hard it could be. Every night brought something new. On my 5th shift, I experienced Rule 6 for the first time. I was halfway through stamping a batch of parts when the overhead lights flickered. 3 rapid pulses that left after images in my vision. I immediately stopped working, turned away from the machine, stared at the floor. Behind me, I could hear something, a scraping sound, like metal being dragged across concrete. It circled around me, getting closer, then farther away, then closer again. I kept my eyes on the ground, breath coming in short gasps, until the sound finally stopped. When I turned back around, everything looked normal. Except the part I'd been working on was now sitting on the floor, bent at an impossible angle, like something had twisted it with immense force. On my 8th shift, Rule 7 kicked in. I'd been working alone in Section D, the only night shift guy assigned there that night. Someone had called in sick. Everything had been fine until 4:15 a.m. when I suddenly realized I hadn't heard any sounds from the rest of the factory for at least 20 minutes. No distant machinery, no voices, no footsteps. Just silence. I remembered the rule immediately. Do not work alone in Section D after 4 a.m. I shut down my machine, grabbed my jacket, walked quickly to the break room. When I got there, 3 other workers were already sitting at tables, not talking, just sitting. One of them, the younger guy I'd seen on my first night, looked at me and nodded. You felt it too, huh? Felt what? That emptiness, like the building just evacuated and nobody told you. He shivered despite the warm air. I used to think Rule 7 was about safety buddies or something, practical, but it's not. Something happens in Section D after 4 when you're alone. Something bad. He paused. I learned that the hard way. I wanted to ask him what he meant, but Ray walked in just then, effectively ending the conversation. We all sat in silence until 5:30, then returned to our sections to finish the night. The stories started coming after my second week. During breaks, in the parking lot after shifts, the other night workers would share their experiences in hushed tones, like swapping ghost stories around a campfire. Except these weren't stories, these were testimonies. Tommy Ruiz worked in assembly. He told me about the time he'd broken Rule 3 in his section. Never stack more than 6 pallets in the staging area. He'd stacked 7 once just to save time. That night, all 7 pallets collapsed, but nothing was damaged. The parts just scattered across the floor, forming a perfect circle. In the center of the circle was a handprint in dust, too large to be human. Sarah Chen worked quality control, one of only 2 women on the night shift. Her section had a rule about never leaving the lights off in the inspection booth. She'd forgotten once, accidentally flipped the switch as she left for break. When she came back, she found all her inspection reports from that night rewritten, in handwriting that wasn't hers. The reports are accurate, better than anything she could have done. But they were signed with names of QC inspectors who died in a factory accident in 1978. James Morrison was the oldest night shift worker, 68 years old, been working at Hartman Industrial for 43 years. He'd seen it all, he told me. One night we were smoking cigarettes in the parking lot during break. His words came out with the smoke dissolving into the cold air. "This place has always been wrong," he said. "Even back in the early days, before we had the formal rules written down, we knew. You could feel it. The building has memory, Marcus. It remembers everything that's happened here, everyone who's worked here, everyone who's died here." He paused. "And at night, those memories come alive." "How many have died here?" I asked. James was quiet for a long moment, staring at the factory building, dark except for the few lit windows where night shift worked. "Officially, company records show 17 fatalities over the past 70 years, industrial accidents mostly. But there's more that didn't make it into the records. People who vanished, like Derek Collins. People who clocked in and never clocked out." He took a final drag from his cigarette. "If I had to guess, closer to 30. That number stuck with me as I went back inside. 30 people. 30 individuals who'd come to this place looking for honest work and never made it home. Were they still here somehow, trapped in whatever dimensional pocket the factory occupied at night? Or had they simply ceased to exist, erased from reality like Derek Collins? These questions haunted me, but I kept coming back. Night after night, I followed the rules precisely, never testing them, never taking chances. The night shift differential accumulated my bank account, and I started paying down debt, started saving money. My finances improved dramatically. All I had to do was survive 8 hours a night in a building that shouldn't exist. But then came the night that changed everything. The night when the rules weren't enough. It was a Thursday in early July, my 3rd month at Hartman Industrial. I'd settled into a routine, as much as anyone could settle into a routine in a place like this. I knew which sections of the parking lot to avoid because the lights flickered. I knew which vending machines worked and which ones would take your money and give you nothing. I knew the sound of normal factory operations versus the sounds that meant something was wrong.
That Thursday started normally enough. I clocked in at 10 p.m., grabbed my coffee, waited in the break room for the night mode tone. Ray was there, along with most of the night crew. We had a full house that night, all 10 positions filled. That was rare. Usually someone called in sick or requested time off. But tonight, everyone had shown up.
Ray seemed tense, though. Kept checking his watch, kept glancing at the doors leading to the factory floor. When the tone finally sounded and we all stood to head to our sections, he grabbed my arm. "Marcus, I need you to be extra careful tonight." "What's going on?" "It's the anniversary, July 11th. Something bad happened on this date, back in 1984. I don't know all the details. Company keeps that stuff sealed up tight, but I know that things get worse on the anniversary. Rules that usually keep us safe, they might not be enough tonight." My stomach dropped. "Should we not be working tonight?" Ray's laugh was bitter. "You think the company cares about that? They need their parts stamped and their quotas met. We work anniversary or not." He released my arm. "Just be smart. If anything feels off, get out of Section D. Don't try to be a hero." I made my way to Section D with Ray's warning echoing in my head. The section looked the same as always. Same machines, same layout, but there was a thickness to the air, like humidity before a storm. The temperature felt wrong too warm despite the factory's air conditioning. I started my work, trying to focus on the familiar motions. Feed the metal, press the pedal, inspect the part. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching me. Not just watching, evaluating, deciding. The first hour passed without incident. I checked my production numbers, verified my measurements, stayed in my designated area. Normal. Everything was normal. Then, at 11:15, the lights flickered. Not the 3 rapid pulses from Rule 6, just a single, long flicker. Left the entire section in darkness for maybe 3 seconds. When the lights came back on, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. The basement access door was open. It should have been locked. It was always locked. Rule 4 specifically said not to investigate if I found it open, to report it to Ray immediately. But Ray was in assembly on the other side of the factory, and my radio was sitting on my workbench, 15 feet away from where I stood. I should have left right then, should have walked straight out of Section D and found Ray, but I made a mistake. I started walking toward the door, telling myself I'd just close it, just secure it so nothing else could happen, that's all. Just close the door and lock it. The basement stairs descended into absolute darkness. The light from Section D didn't penetrate more than a few feet down, leaving the rest as a black void. But as I approached, I could smell something rising from that darkness. Oil and old metal and something else. Something organic and rotting. I reached for the door handle, my hand shaking. Just close it. Don't look down there. Don't think about what might be in that darkness. Then I heard it. Footsteps. Coming up the stairs from the basement. Slow, deliberate footsteps, each one accompanied by a wet, squelching sound. I froze. Every instinct screamed at me to run, but my body wouldn't respond. I just stood there, watching the darkness, listening to those footsteps get closer. Closer. A hand emerged from the darkness. It was gray, the color of old concrete. The skin looked wrong, almost waxy. The fingers were too long, the joints bending at angles that weren't quite right. The hand gripped the railing. I could see dark fluid dripping from the fingertips. That broke my paralysis. I stumbled backward, nearly falling, then turned and ran. I didn't grab my radio, didn't shut down my machine, didn't do anything except run. Made it to the break room in what felt like seconds, heart hammering so hard I thought I might pass out. Ray was already there. So were 2 other workers, both looking shaken. Ray took one look at my face and stood up. "What happened?" "The door, the basement door in Section D, it was open. Something was coming up the stairs." Ray's face went pale. He grabbed the radio from his belt, keyed it. "All night shift. This is Team Lead Ray. Everyone report to the break room immediately. I repeat, everyone to the break room now."
Over the next few minutes, the rest of the night crew filtered in, looking confused. When everyone was accounted for, Ray did a head count. 10 workers. We were all here. He turned to me. You said something was coming up the stairs? I saw a hand, gray, wrong-looking, and I heard footsteps, but they sounded wet. One of the older workers, a guy named Pete, who usually worked maintenance, spoke up. That's not supposed to happen. The basement's been sealed for 40 years after the incident. What incident? I asked. Ray and Pete exchanged glances.
Finally, Pete said, July 11th, 1984. Night shift. A worker named Robert Henshaw went into the basement to check on some water pipes that were making noise. He never came back up. They found the door open the next morning, but no sign of Robert. They searched the entire basement, top to bottom. Found nothing except... He trailed off. Except what? Except handprints. All over the walls, the floor, the ceiling. Hundreds of them, maybe thousands, all in this gray substance they couldn't identify. Chemical analysis came back inconclusive. After that, they sealed the basement, welded the door shut from the inside. It was supposed to be impossible to open. I felt sick. So what was down there tonight? Nobody answered. We all just sat in silence, listening to the hum of the fluorescent lights and the distant sounds of the factory's automated systems. Finally, Ray said, We're staying here until 5:30. All of us. I don't care about the production numbers tonight. Nobody goes back to their section alone. What about the machines? Someone asked. Some of them are still running. Let them run. We'll deal with it in the morning. Right now, we stay together. Ray's voice left no room for argument. So we waited. 10 grown adults huddled in a break room, too scared to go back to our jobs. Nobody slept. Nobody even tried. We just sat there, jumping at every sound, watching the clock count down the minutes. At 2 a.m., the temperature in the break room dropped. This wasn't like the cold in Section D, controlled and expected. This was sudden and brutal. Frost forming on the windows, our breath coming out in thick clouds. Tommy pulled out his phone, opened a weather app. It says it's 78 degrees outside. The cold lasted exactly 1 hour. At 3 a.m., the temperature returned to normal, and with it came a sound that made us all go rigid. Someone was walking through the factory. We could hear the footsteps, slow, measured, moving from section to section. Not the sound of work boots on concrete, something heavier, wetter, the sound I'd heard on those basement stairs. The footsteps moved past the break room. Through the small window in the door, I caught a glimpse of something moving through the factory floor. It was tall, maybe 7 feet. Its silhouette was wrong. The proportions didn't match anything human. Too long in the arms, too narrow at the waist. The head at an odd angle, like a broken doll. Sarah was sitting closest to the window. She turned away immediately, face white. Don't look at it. Don't let it know we're watching. We all looked down at the floor as the footsteps continued past. They moved through the entire factory, a perimeter walk that took 20 minutes. Then they faded. Silence returned. Nobody spoke until 4 a.m. Finally, Ray checked his watch. All right, I'm going to do a quick check of Section D, make sure the basement door is closed. Marcus, you're coming with me. Everyone else stays here. I didn't want to go back to Section D. Every fiber of my being was screaming at me to refuse. But Ray was already standing, already heading for the door, and I found myself following. Maybe it was pride, not wanting to look weak in front of the others. Maybe it was curiosity, needing to know what was really down there. Or maybe I was just an idiot. Section D looked undisturbed. My machine was still running, stamping out parts on an empty cycle. The lights were normal, temperature comfortable, and the basement door was closed. Not just closed, welded shut, with thick beads of metal sealing the frame to the wall. I stared at it. That wasn't like that before. I saw it open. Ray ran his hand over the welding marks. They were cold to the touch, as if they'd been there for decades. The building repairs itself sometimes, closes the gaps, seals the wounds. It doesn't want things from down there getting out any more than we do.
"What's down there, Ray? Really?" He was quiet for a long moment, hand still on the door. "I don't know. Nobody does. But whatever happened in 1984, whatever took Robert Henshaw, it's still down there, waiting. And once a year, on the anniversary, it tries to come back up." These stories are getting even darker. If you're enjoying this, hit the like button, comment below with your own night shift experiences, and subscribe for more terrifying true stories. We returned to the break room. At 5:30, we all filed back to our sections to shut down equipment and do a final count. At 6 a.m., the tone sounded. The lights switched back to day mode. The building transformed instantly, becoming just another factory, mundane and ordinary in the early morning light. I clocked out and walked to my car with the rest of the night shift. We moved as a group, nobody wanting to be alone. In the parking lot, as we were getting into our vehicles, Ray called out to me. "Marcus, you did good tonight. Followed your instincts, got out when things felt wrong. That's what separates the survivors from the statistics." He paused. "But I want you to think about something. Think about whether this job is worth it, because it's only going to get stranger from here." I drove home as the sun rose over the Indiana cornfields. Ray's words echoed in my head. Was it worth it? The money was good, better than anything else I qualified for, but what good was money if I didn't survive long enough to spend it? I slept poorly that day, plagued by dreams of gray hands and wet footsteps. When I woke up in the late afternoon, I found myself researching the factory's history online. There wasn't much available. A few mentions in local newspapers about the factory opening in 1952, some articles about union negotiations in the 70s, a brief mention of the Robert Henshaw disappearance in 1984. Nothing about what the factory was built on. Nothing about the land's history before industrial development. I called Ray that evening, before a shift. "I want to know more about the building, about what we're really dealing with." He sighed. "Marcus, some knowledge doesn't help you. It just makes the fear worse. I need to understand. If I'm going to keep working here, I need to know what I'm up against." Another long pause. "All right, come in an hour early tonight. I'll tell you what I know. But after this, no more questions. You either accept it or you quit. Those are your only options." That night, Ray and I sat in his car in the parking lot as the sun set. He smoked a cigarette while he talked, eyes fixed on the factory building. "This factory's been here since 1952, but the land's got history that goes back further, way back, before the Industrial Revolution, before Europeans settled this area. This was Potawatomi territory. The tribe had stories about this particular piece of land, warnings passed down through generations." He took a drag from his cigarette. "They said there was a place where the barrier between worlds was thin, a doorway. They performed rituals here to keep it closed, to strengthen the boundary. But when white settlers came through, they didn't care about native warnings. They built a farm on this land in 1857. The family that owned it, the Hartmans, they had it for almost 100 years. Same family that the factory's named after?" Ray nodded. "Theophilus Hartman started the manufacturing company in 1952, built the factory on his family's old farmland. But here's the thing, Marcus. Every generation of Hartmans who owned this land, they had tragedies. Missing children, adults who vanished without trace, workers who went into the barn and never came out. The pattern repeated for almost a century. And Theophilus has built a factory here anyway? He thought he could control it. He was an engineer, rational, scientific. He thought the old stories were superstition. So he cleared the farmland, broke ground, built the factory. And for a while it seemed fine. Day shift operated normally, parts got made, orders got filled. But at night," Ray flipped ash from his cigarette, "at night, the doorways started to crack open. I felt cold despite the summer heat. The basement The basement's where they built the foundation, dug down 30 feet into bedrock. But what they didn't know was that the old Potawatomi doorway was underground. They built right on top of it. And the construction damaged the seals those ancient rituals had put in place. Started letting things through. Things? What kind of things?
Ray turned to look at me. His eyes were haunted. I don't know what they are, Marcus. Nobody does. Maybe they're spirits from the other side of that doorway. Maybe they're pieces of people who went through and couldn't come back whole. Maybe there's something else entirely, something we don't have words for. He paused. But they're hungry. They're always hungry. For what? For life, for reality, for existence in this world. That's what the rules are really for. They're not just safety protocols, they're boundaries. Ways to tell the things that come through at night that we see them, we acknowledge them, but we won't engage. We won't give them what they need to fully manifest. I thought about the voice that had called my name on my first night, the gray hand coming up the basement stairs, the tall figure with wrong proportions walking through the factory. How long have you known about this? Since my second year here, 23 years ago. I was younger then, thought I could tough anything out, but one night I broke the rules, got curious like you did, went looking for answers where I shouldn't. I saw things that night that I can't unsee, things that made me understand this isn't a battle we can win. The best we can do is maintain the boundaries, follow the rules, and survive our shifts. Why don't you quit? Ray laughed, but there was no humor in it. I tried once. Got 3 weeks into a new job at an automotive plant down in Bloomington. But I couldn't stop thinking about this place. Couldn't stop worrying about the new workers who didn't understand, didn't know what they were really dealing with. And then I started having dreams. Dreams about the factory, about Section D, about that basement door opening. I'd wake up and I'd smell that rotting smell, that basement smell, even though I was miles away. He stubbed out his cigarette. That's when I understood. Once you work here long enough, really work here, not just show up for a paycheck, the factory marks you. You become part of it, and it doesn't let you go easily. I felt a chill run down my spine. Are you saying I can't leave? I'm saying you can try, but the longer you stay, the harder it gets. The factory knows you now, Marcus. It knows your voice, your smell, your presence. It's learned you, and things that learn you don't forget. We sat in silence for a few minutes. Finally, I said, So what am I supposed to do? Keep following the rules. Don't get curious. Don't test the boundaries. Do your work, take your pay, and accept that some questions don't have answers you want to hear. He checked his watch. Shift starts in 15 minutes. You coming in, or you done? I looked at the factory. In the fading daylight, it looked almost beautiful. The red brick, warm and solid, the windows reflecting the orange sunset. Hard to believe that in a few hours, that same building would transform into something else entirely. But Ray was right about one thing. I needed the money, and despite everything, part of me needed to understand, to document what was happening here, to bear witness to something impossible. That old curiosity that had driven me my whole life, that need to know the truth behind the stories. It wouldn't let me walk away. I'm coming in, I said. Ray nodded. We got out of his car and walked toward the employee entrance together. The other night shift workers were arriving, parking their cars, grabbing their lunches. We all moved like soldiers heading into battle, resigned but determined. That night passed without major incident. I followed every rule perfectly, never testing, never experimenting. The cold came at 2 a.m. and left at 3. The lights flickered once, but not in the pattern that required me to turn away. The building settled and creaked around me, but nothing called my name. At 6 a.m., I clocked out and drove home in the early morning light. Another shift survived.
another night's pay earned, another step deeper into whatever contract I'd unknowingly signed when I took this job. The months blended together after that. Summer faded into fall, fall into winter. I learned the rhythms of the factory, the patterns of when it was more active and when it was quiet. I learned to read the signs, to sense when a night would be dangerous before the tone even sounded. I became, for lack of a better word, good at my job. Not just the technical aspects of operating the machinery, but the survival aspects, the knowing when to run and when to stand still, the understanding that some rules could bend slightly while others were absolutely rigid. I also learned about the other workers, their stories, their histories with the factory. Tommy had been there 5 years. He'd started after losing his job as a mechanic and finding out his wife was pregnant. He needed the health insurance, needed the steady income. Now his daughter was 4 years old, and he was still here, still following the rules, still surviving.
Sarah had come to Hartman Industrial after her mother got sick, needing the money for medical bills. The bills were paid off now. Her mother recovered, but Sarah was still here. Couldn't seem to leave. Even Ray, with his 23 years, couldn't articulate exactly why he stayed. It wasn't just the marking, the way the factory claimed you. It was something else, a sense of duty maybe, or guardianship. Someone had to be here to teach the new workers, to keep them alive, to maintain the boundaries. If everyone who knew the truth left, what would happen to the people who came after? But winter brought new challenges. The factory seemed more active in the cold months, more aggressive. The rules stayed the same, but the consequences for breaking them felt more severe. We lost a worker in December, a guy named Miguel who'd only been there 2 months. He'd been working Section C, not my area, but I heard about it at shift end. He'd violated one of his section's rules, something about never entering the chemical storage closet after 3 a.m. They found his work gloves outside the closet door, laid out neatly side by side. Nothing else. No Miguel, no signs of struggle, just those gloves arranged with careful precision. The company did their standard investigation, called it a walk-off. Miguel's family tried to push for more, filed missing persons reports, got the local police involved, but there was no evidence of foul play, no witnesses, nothing to investigate. Eventually they gave up. Another name added to the unofficial count, the real number that James Morrison kept track of. By February, I'd been at Hartman Industrial for 10 months. I was now one of the senior night shift workers, training new hires, passing on the rules, watching to see who would take them seriously and who would dismiss them as superstition. Most of them seriously. The ones who didn't usually quit within a week or two. The smart ones, anyway. But there was one new guy who concerned me. His name was Brandon. The early 20s, with that particular brand of overconfidence that comes from never being truly tested. He'd laugh when I went over the rules, make jokes about ghosts and demons, act like the whole thing was some elaborate hazing ritual. I tried to warn him, tried to make him understand, but Brandon was convinced he knew better. I knew how it would end. I'd seen it before with other workers, that mix of arrogance and disbelief that always led to the same outcome. But I couldn't force him to take it seriously. All I could do was make sure he had the information, make sure he knew the rules, and hope he'd wake up before it was too late. The night it happened was a Tuesday in late February. Brandon had been assigned to Section D, my section, which made me his supervisor for the shift. I went over the rules with him again before we started, emphasized the importance of following them exactly. He nodded and agreed, but I could see in his eyes that he was just humoring me. The first few hours were fine. Brandon did his work, followed the basic safety protocols, stayed at his station, but I could see him getting restless, see that dangerous curiosity building. When the 2 a.m. temperature drop hit, he actually laughed. "Man, you guys weren't kidding about the AC. This is intense." At 3 a.m., when the temperature normalized, Brandon walked over to my station. "So that basement door, the one we're not supposed to go near, what's really down there? Storage? Old equipment? It doesn't matter what's down there. The rule is stay away from it." "Come on, Marcus. You've been here almost a year. You've never been curious?
Never wanted to just peek down there and see what everyone's so worried about? I stopped my machine, turned to face him. Brandon, I'm going to tell you this once, and I need you to really hear me. That door, that basement, that's not a joke. It's not an OSHA thing or a liability thing. It's a survival thing. Whatever's down there, it's not something you want to meet. He smirked. You really believe that? You really think there's, monsters in the basement? I don't know what's down there. I just know that people who go looking don't come back. That's what they said about the old asylum in my hometown. Turned out to be nothing, just homeless people and raccoons. He headed back to his station. I'm not saying I'm going to do anything stupid. I just think we're all working ourselves up over nothing. I watched him go, that sick feeling in my stomach intensifying. He was going to test the rules. Maybe not tonight, maybe not next week, but eventually. And there was nothing I could do to stop him. The night continued without incident. At 4 a.m., another worker joined us in Section D, so Rule 7 was satisfied. At 5:30, we returned to the rake room. Brandon seemed disappointed that nothing exciting had happened, like he'd been expecting jump scares and special effects. In the parking lot after shift end, I caught up with him as he was getting in his car. Brandon, I know you think this is all nonsense, but I'm asking you, as someone who wants you to survive, please take the rules seriously. Just for a few more weeks. See what happens during that time. See what you notice. If after a month you still think it's nothing, then fine. But give it a real chance.
He paused, hand on the car door. For a moment, I thought I'd gotten through to him. Then he said, "A month, huh? All right, Marcus, I'll give you a month. But when nothing happens, you're buying me a beer and admitting you were messing with me." "Deal," I said, knowing I'd never have to make good on it. Brandon lasted 3 weeks. It happened on a Friday night in mid-March. I wasn't working that night, had requested a day off to deal with some personal business. But I got the call from Ray at 7 a.m., just as I was making coffee. "Marcus, it's Brandon. He's gone." My coffee mug slipped from my hand, shattering on the kitchen floor. "What happened?" Ray's voice was heavy with exhaustion. "He was working Section D alone after 4 a.m. Rule 7. The other worker, Danny, he'd gone to use the bathroom, was only gone for 5 minutes. When he came back, Brandon wasn't at his station." He paused, hand on the car door. For a moment, I thought I'd gotten through to him. Then he said, "A month, huh? All right, Marcus, I'll give you a month. But when nothing happens, you're buying me a beer and admitting you were messing with me." "Deal," I said, knowing I'd never have to make good on it. Brandon lasted 3 weeks. It happened on a Friday night in mid-March. I wasn't working that night, had requested a day off to deal with some personal business. But I got the call from Ray at 7 a.m., just as I was making coffee. "Marcus, it's Brandon. He's gone." My coffee mug slipped from my hand, shattering on the kitchen floor. "What happened?" Ray's voice was heavy with exhaustion. "He was working Section D alone after 4 a.m. Rule 7. The other worker, Danny, he'd gone to use the bathroom, was only gone for 5 minutes. When he came back, Brandon wasn't at his station. Danny searched Section D, called for him, nothing. Then he noticed the basement door was open. No. Ray, tell me he didn't. Flashlight was on the floor next to the door, pointed down the stairs. Danny said he could hear something moving down there. Something big. He followed protocol, left Section D, came and got me. By the time we got back with others, the door was sealed shut again, just like last July, welded closed. I sank into a kitchen chair, still processing. "Did you call it in?" "Company's handling it, calling it a walk-off, same as always. Brandon's car is still on the lot, his stuff still in his locker, but according to the official story, he just left in the middle of his shift. Police might investigate, but you know how that goes. No evidence, no witnesses who'll talk about what really happens here at night." "His family will want answers." "They always do, but what are we going to tell them?
Your son walked into a basement that shouldn't be able to open and got taken by something that shouldn't exist? Ray's voice cracked slightly. I tried to warn him, Marcus. You tried to warn him, but he didn't listen. After we hung up, I sat in my kitchen, surrounded by broken coffee mug pieces, thinking about Brandon, thinking about his smirk and his overconfidence and his absolute certainty that he knew better. 23 years old, his whole life ahead of him. And now he was gone, trapped somewhere between worlds or erased from existence entirely, and there wasn't a damn thing anyone could do about it. I didn't go to his memorial service, couldn't face his family, couldn't look his mother in the eye knowing what I knew. Instead, I showed up for my next shift and did my job, because that's what you do. You survive, you follow the rules, and you try not to think too hard about the ones who didn't. The factory took it out of me after Brandon. Something shifted in how I viewed the place. It wasn't just a strange building with mysterious rules anymore. It was a predator, conscious, calculating, patient. It didn't chase you down or attack outright. It waited for you to make a mistake, to get comfortable, to forget that you were never really safe. And then it struck. I started documenting everything, kept a journal of every shift, every rule violation I witnessed, every strange occurrence. Part of me thought maybe if I recorded it all, found patterns, I could understand the factory better, could maybe find a way to really protect people, not just delay the inevitable.
But the more I documented, the more I realized how futile it was. The factory didn't follow patterns, not really. It adapted. Rules that work 1 month might need adjustment the next. New phenomena would appear without warning. It was evolving. Or maybe it had always been this way, and we were just finally noticing. By my 1-year anniversary at Hartman Industrial, I'd witnessed 4 disappearances, including Brandon. I'd survived countless close calls, violated exactly 0 rules, and earned enough money to pay off most of my debts. I'd also aged in ways that didn't show on my face. Sleep came harder. Trust came harder. The normal world felt distant and unreal compared to the 8 hours I spent each night in that factory. Ray threw me a small celebration in the break room on my anniversary. Just cake from the grocery store and cards from the other night shift workers. 1 year, he said, raising a coffee cup and toast. That's longer than most make it. You're one of us now, Marcus. One of us. The survivors. The marked ones. The people who knew what lurked in the space between day and night at Hartman Industrial and chose to face it anyway. But something Ray said stuck with me. Now that you've made it a year, I should tell you something about the rules. We were alone in the break room, the other workers having returned to their sections. Ray looked older than I'd ever seen him, the weight of his knowledge pressing down on his shoulders. The rules aren't static, Marcus. They change, slowly, over time. New rules get added, old ones get modified. That's because the factory's learning too, learning what keeps us safe, learning what we are afraid of, learning how to test us in new ways. Who updates the rules? We do, the senior workers. When we notice new patterns, new dangers, we add to the list. That's part of our job, part of why we can't leave. We're not just workers, we're watchers, gatekeepers. We document the changes and pass them on to protect the ones who come after. He pulled out a newer version of the Section D rules, more items added since the list I'd first received. These 3 at the bottom, those are from the past 6 months, new behaviors we've observed, new boundaries we've had to establish. I read through them. If you find personal items that don't belong to you or any current worker, do not touch them. Report their location to Ray immediately. Between midnight and 1 a.m., you may hear music playing from an unknown source. Do not attempt to find the source. Continue your work and ignore it. If you see writing on the walls or equipment that wasn't there before, document it, but do not read it aloud. Why these? What happened? Different incidents, different near misses. Rule 11 came after we found a wallet in Section D that belonged to Robert Henshaw, the guy who disappeared in 1984. Just sitting on a workbench like he'd left it there yesterday.
Tommy picked it up before I could stop him. He was sick for a week after that. Hallucinating. Talking about places that didn't make sense. He recovered, but it changed him. And the music started happening around Christmas. Sounds like it's coming from the break room, or maybe the offices. But when you go looking, there's nothing there. One guy followed it too far, got lost in sections of the factory he'd worked in for years. Took us 3 hours to find him. He was wandering in the shipping area, which should have been locked, completely disoriented. Said the music led him there. And the writing. Ray's expression darkened. That's the newest one. Started about 2 months ago. Words appear on walls, on machines, written in that same gray substance we found in the basement after Robert Henshaw. The words themselves, they do things to you if you read them aloud. Put thoughts in your head that aren't yours. Show you things that haven't happened yet, or things that can't happen at all. I felt cold. Have you read them? Once. Just once. Before I understood what they were. Saw myself in the basement, down at the bottom of those stairs, standing in front of a door that shouldn't exist. And something was on the other side of that door waiting for me to open it. I couldn't move in the vision, couldn't look away. You just had to stand there and listen to it whisper about all the things it would show me if I just turned the handle. What did it show you? Doesn't matter. Point is, I didn't turn that handle, didn't open that door. But ever since then, I dream about it every single night. And in the dreams, I'm getting closer and closer to opening it. We sat in heavy silence. Finally, I asked the question that had been building in me for months. Why doesn't someone just tear the factory down, demolish it, salt the earth, whatever it takes? Ray laughed, but it was hollow. You think they haven't tried? Company tried to close this location in '98. Planned to move all operations to a facility in Michigan. Spent millions on the transition. But things started going wrong. Equipment at the new facility would malfunction for no reason. Workers at the new place started having accidents, bad ones. And the building here, the old factory, it started making noise even though no one was working in it. Neighbors called the police, said they heard machinery running all night. When the police investigated, everything was shut down, not a soul in the building. But people kept calling. So they reopened it. Had to. The factory doesn't want to close. And the things that come through at night, they're tied to this specific location. You can't just rebuild somewhere else and expect them to stay behind. Whatever doorway the Potawatomi were guarding, it's here. It's always going to be here. I thought about that. About spending the rest of my working life in this building, following these rules, watching new workers arrive and hoping they'd survive long enough to learn. About eventually becoming like Ray, marked and trapped and too invested to walk away even if I could. Is there any way out? I asked. Really out, I mean, not just quitting, but actually being free of this place. Ray was quiet for a long time. I've heard stories, rumors really, about workers who found ways to sever the connection. But they're just stories, Marcus, and every one of them ends with the person dead or worse. So even if there is a way out, I'm not sure it's better than staying. The tone sounded, signaling the start of our shift. We both stood, gathering our things, preparing to face another night. As we walked toward the factory floor, Ray put a hand on my shoulder. He asked why I stay, really stay. It's because someone has to remember. Someone has to bear witness to what happens here, to the people we lose. If we all walked away, if we all chose to forget, then guys like Brandon and Miguel and Robert Henshaw, they'd really be gone, like they never existed at all. But as long as we're here, as long as we remember, they're still real. Their deaths meant something. I nodded, understanding. It was a small thing, remembering, and sometimes small things are all we have to hold on to. I'm writing this now because I need someone else to know, neither to be a record somewhere outside the factory walls. I'm coming up on 18 months at Hartman Industrial, and I can feel the marking getting stronger. I dream about the factory every night now, even when I'm not scheduled to work. I'll wake up and just for a second I'll smell that basement smell, oil and rot and something older. It fades, but not completely. Never completely. New rules keep getting added. Just last week, we added number 14 to the Section D list. If your shadow moves independently of your body, stop working immediately and notify Ray. Do not attempt to follow your shadow or interact with it. That one came after an incident with Sarah. She'd been working quality control when she noticed her shadow pointing in the wrong direction, cast by a light source that shouldn't exist. She was smart enough to stop, smart enough to call for help. We found her standing perfectly still in the inspection booth, her shadow reaching toward the wall like it was trying to touch something. When we turned on all the lights, flooding the space with illumination, the shadow snapped back to normal. But Sarah took 2 weeks off after that. When she came back, she looked older. We all do eventually. The factory's patient. It can wait. It's been waiting over 70 years, and it'll keep waiting long after I'm gone.
But I'm not ready to give up yet. Not ready to become another Robert Henshaw, another name on the unofficial list. I follow the rules, every single one, every single night. I've never tested them, never pushed the boundaries. And I teach new workers the same caution, the same respect for what we're dealing with. Some listen, some don't. All I can do is keep trying, keep passing on the knowledge, keep the count as low as possible. Because here's the truth I've learned after 18 months in this place. The factory isn't evil, not exactly. It's not trying to hurt us out of malice or cruelty. It's just existing, being what it is. We're the ones who chose to build on top of it, to punch through the barriers that were keeping it contained. We're the ones who ignored the warnings and thought we knew better. And now we're living with the consequences. The day shift still doesn't know. They work their 8 hours in the sunshine, deal with normal factory problems, normal workplace drama. They complain about quotas and broken equipment and difficult managers. They'll never understand what happens when the lights switch to night mode, when the tone sounds and the rules take effect. Maybe that's for the best. Maybe some people are better off not knowing. But we know, the night shift knows. And we'll keep coming back, keep following the rules, keep surviving one shift at a time. Because someone has to. Someone has to watch the doorway, maintain the boundaries, remember the ones who didn't make it. My shift starts in 30 minutes. I'll clock in at 10 p.m., make my coffee, wait for the tone. I'll check my rules, memorize any updates. I'll walk to Section D and start my work. Feed the metal, press the pedal, inspect the parts. Normal factory work. Except it's not normal, and it never will be. The fluorescent lights in Section D are humming right now, even though I'm sitting in my car in the parking lot. I can hear them through the walls, that strange frequency that doesn't quite sound mechanical. It's almost like they're calling me, welcoming me back. Because after 18 months, I'm not just working at the factory anymore. I'm part of it, and it's part of me. Last week, something happened that I haven't told Ray about yet. Something that makes me think my time here might be running out faster than I thought. I was doing my routine walkthrough of Section D, checking equipment before starting production. That's when I noticed the writing. Gray letters, maybe 6 inches tall, written on the side of my press machine. They weren't there during my last shift, I'm certain of that. I would have seen them. The words said, "Marcus knows the way down." I stared at them for a long time. My hand started shaking. Rule 13. If you see writing on walls or equipment that wasn't there before, document it but do not read it aloud. I had already read it, silently, but I'd read it. And now I can't stop thinking about those words. Marcus knows the way down. The thing is, I do. I've walked past that basement door hundreds of times. I know exactly where it is, exactly how many steps it would take to reach it, exactly what the handle would feel like in my hand. And lately I've been having the same dream Ray described, standing at the bottom of those basement stairs, in front of a door that shouldn't exist, something on the other side, waiting. In the dream I can hear it breathing, slow and wet and patient. And every night I get a little closer to turning that handle. I haven't told Ray because I know what he'll say, that I need to leave, that the factory's claim on me is getting too strong, and that if I don't walk away now, I never will. But here's the thing, I don't think I can leave anymore. 2 nights ago, I tried.
got in my car after my shift, started driving toward Indianapolis. Thought maybe I'd just keep going, find a new city, a new job, a fresh start.
I made it about 15 miles before I had to pull over. My hands were shaking so badly I couldn't hold the steering wheel. My heart was racing. Felt like I was having a panic attack. And that smell, that basement smell, it filled my car. So strong I thought I might vomit. I turned around, drove back toward the factory. And the moment I could see the building in the distance, the symptoms stopped. Just like that. Heart rate normal, hands steady, the smell gone. The factory didn't want me to leave, and I wasn't strong enough to fight it. So here I am, writing this down and creating a record, because I think I know how this ends now. One night, probably soon, I'm going to break a rule. Maybe on purpose, maybe by accident, but it's going to happen. Maybe I'll acknowledge a voice that calls my name. Maybe I'll stay in Section D past 5:30. Maybe I'll read one of those gray words aloud. Or maybe I'll do what I've been dreaming about every night. Maybe I'll walk to that basement door. And this time, when I find it open, I won't run away. I'll walk down those stairs, all the way to the bottom, to that door that shouldn't exist. And I'll turn the handle. Because the factory has been patient with me. It's let me follow the rules, let me survive, let me think I had some control over what happens here. But the truth is, the factory always gets what it wants eventually. It got Derek Collins. It got Miguel. It got Brandon. It got 30 others over 70 years. And soon, it'll get me too. The rules keep us safe. That's what Ray always says. But maybe the rules aren't about safety. Maybe they're just about timing. About letting the factory decide when it's ready to take you. About giving you the illusion of control until the moment it's stripped away. I'm clocking in now. Ray just pulled into the parking lot. The sun's almost down. In a few minutes, that tone will sound. The lights will shift to night mode, and Section D will be waiting for me. With its humming fluorescence, its cold temperature drops, its voices that know my name. And somewhere, deep in the basement below, something else is waiting too. Something that's been patient for 18 months. Something that knows I'm almost ready. The writing on my machine this morning had changed by the time I left. When I did my final walkthrough at 5:30, the letters had rearranged themselves. They said soon. Just that one word, in those same gray letters. Soon. I don't know if I'll make it through tonight. Don't know if I'll survive the week. But I want this on record. I want someone to know what happened here. What's still happening here. If you're reading this, if you're considering a night shift job at any factory, any warehouse, any building that's been around longer than it should be, pay attention. Read the rules carefully. Follow them exactly. And if something tells you to run, to quit, to get out while you still can, listen to that voice. Because some jobs aren't worth the money. Some places claim more than just your time. They claim your soul. And once that contract is signed, once the factory marks you as its own, there's no walking away. There's only following the rules for as long as you can, and hoping that when your time comes, it's quick. The lights just shifted to night mode. I heard the tone echo through the building. Ray's walking toward the employee entrance. He'll expect me to follow, to clock in, to take my place in Section D. And I will, because I don't have a choice anymore. The factory owns me now, just like it owns everyone who works the night shift. Just like it'll own whoever comes after me when they find my work gloves laid out neatly beside that basement door. Want more real horror stories? Check out our video on the storage facility where people went to hide their secrets and never came back. The link is on screen now. My name is Marcus Webb. I work the night shift at Hartman Industrial Manufacturing in Indiana. We have rules the day shift doesn't know about. And if I disappear tonight, if I become another name on James Morrison's list, at least you'll know why. The rules keep us safe until they don't. And then the factory takes what it's been waiting for all along. I'm walking in now. Ray's holding the door open, waiting for me. The fluorescent lights are humming louder than usual tonight. And from somewhere deep below Section D, I can hear something else. Footsteps.
slow and wet. Coming up the stairs, the basement door shouldn't be able to open anymore. It's welded shut. Has been for 40 years. But I think tonight might be different. I think tonight the factory's done waiting. And so am I. See you on the other side. Or don't. Either way, remember the rules. They're all that stand between you and what's waiting in the dark. And sometimes, even rules aren't enough.